Water and electrolyte balance. At the end of the chapter, the students should be able to describe body fluid composition, explain the mechanisms controlling fluid and electrolyte movement, and identify the major anions and cations in the fluid compartments of the body.
Good day, everyone. So for today, we will be discussing about water and electrolyte balance. So first we have water. Water is very important to human body. In fact, water constitutes about 60 to 70% of the total body weight. With that, a deprivation of water by as much as 10% will already result in illness, and a 20% loss of body water may cause death. It is next to oxygen in importance for the maintenance of life. Water moistens tissues in the eyes, nose, and mouth. It helps dissolve minerals and nutrients to make them accessible to your body and carries nutrients and oxygen to cells. Water found in a normal adult human body totals to 45 liters. Two-thirds of this, which is the 30 liters, is found inside or within the cell, while the one-third or the 15 liters is located outside of the cell. So we have here 5 given functions of water. First, we have water is the universal solvent. It is considered as a universal solvent because it is capable of dissolving more substances than any other liquid. Second, many chemical reactions require water. It serves as a catalyst in many biological reactions, especially those that involve digestion, absorption, and circulation. So, water is central to 2 related fundamental metabolic reactions in organisms, that is the photosynthesis and cellular respiration. So, all organisms depend directly and indirectly on these 2 reactions. So, for example, we have the reaction of hydrolysis, which requires water. It is a double decomposition reaction with water as one of the reactants. Third, it is a vital component of tissues, muscle, and glycogen, and is essential for growth. Water is essential for cellular homeostasis because it transports nutrients to cells and removes waste from the cell. Next, we have water acts as lubricant of the joints and the viscera in the abdominal cavity. Water helps keep the joint lubricated. A component of synovial fluid, water is necessary to help prevent joint friction. Synovial fluid lubricates and cushions the joints and cartilage surrounding them, keeping the bones from rubbing each other. Lastly, we have it is also a regulator of body temperature through its ability to conduct heat. The body of water has an important role as a thermoregulator, regulating the overall body temperature by helping dissipate heat.
So as for water intake, amount of water needed by the body may be met by the direct intake of water. Water ingested as such or from water bound with foods and form metabolic water, which is a result of oxidation of foodstuff in the body. Water can produce as an end product of metabolism amounts to approximately 14 grams or 100 calories. For example, 100-gram fats, carbohydrates, and proteins when oxidized will yield 107 mm, 60 mm, and 41 mm of water respectively. So many factors impact how much water you need, including your age, gender, activity, level, and overall health. Women require more water during their pregnancy and while they are breastfeeding. Individuals with certain health conditions such as congestive heart failure or renal disease also have different fluids needs. The same is true for those with serious infections or diarrhea. So inadequate intake levels for water have been determined for generally healthy people and are based on age and gender. So for women, the amount of total water is about 11.5 cups per day, and for men is 15.5 cups. These estimates, however, include fluids consumed from both foods and beverages, including water. So typically, you get about 20% of the water you need from the food you eat. Taking that into account, women need about 9 cups of fluid per day and men about 12.5 cups in order to help replenish the amount of water that is lost. So, there are ways to increase water or water intake. Listen to your body. So, if you are thirsty, drink water, especially this is especially important if you are active or live in very hot climates. The second is option for water. Instead of soda or energy drink, go with a tall glass of water. Drink water through the day. So consume water with meals as well as between meals. Carry a refillable water bottle. So keep water handy. So it's there when you want to reach for a drink. And lastly, add a flavor enhancer. For variety, squeeze some fresh lemon or lime juice into your water. Toss in a couple of cucumber slices or add a few fresh basil leaves. So that's the way to increase water intake.
So now let's talk about the water output. On a typical day, the average adult will take in about 2,500 ml or almost 3 quarts of aqueous fluids. Although most of the intake comes through the digestive tract, about 230 ml or 8 ounces per day is generated metabolically in the last steps of aerobic respiration. Additionally, each day, about the same volume of water leaves the body by different routes. So this means that the water that we intake in the body must be equal to the water output, which is approximately 2,500 ml per day to prevent water imbalance. The water lives in the body via several channels. So one is through the kidneys or urine excretions. So this where the majority of the fluid output occurs, which is approximately 1,500 ml per day or 1.59 quarts per day in the normal adult resting state. However, depending on the body needs, the kidneys may excrete less than a pint or up to several gallons of urine per day. So the next is through the skin by perspiration and sweating, and through the respiratory tract by breathing. So some fluids is lost through perspiration, which is part of the body's temperature control mechanism, and water vapor in exhaled air by breathing. So these are termed as insensible fluid losses, as they cannot be easily measured. Some sources say insensible losses account for 500 ml to 600 ml per day or 0.5 to 0.6 quarts of water in adults, while other sources put the minimum value at 800 ml or 0.8 quarts. Lastly is through gastrointestinal tract or feces. So feces are normally removed from the body 1 or 2 times a day. About 100 to 200 grams of feces are excreted by a human adult daily. Normally, feces are made up of 75% water and 25% solid matter. So in addition, an adult loses approximately 100 ml per day of fluid through the feces. So the water may also be lost together with the electrolytes through tears, stomach suctions, breathing, vomiting, bleeding, perspiration from burns, and from the ulcer, skin diseases, or uninjured or burned areas. Next is the water regulation output. So the body homeostatic mechanism, which maintains a constant internal environment, ensure that a balance between fluid gain and fluid loss is maintained. The antidiuretic hormones, vasopressin or ADH, and aldosterone play an important role in this. So if the body is becoming fluid deficient, there will be an increase in the secretion of these hormones, causing fluid to be retained by the kidneys and urine output to be reduced. Conversely, if fluid levels are excessive, secretion of these hormones is suppressed, resulting in less retention of fluid by the kidneys and a subsequent increase in the volume of urine produced. So, as I've mentioned earlier, it is important that the water that we intake is equal to the water output to prevent water imbalance. Overhydration of water intoxication. So what is water intoxication? So it is also known as water poisoning. Water intoxication is a disruption of brain function caused by drinking too much water. Doing so increases the amount of water in the blood. This can dilute the electrolytes, especially sodium, in the blood. So when large amount of water are lost in the body, usually caused by high environmental temperature, sodium is also lost. This phenomenon causes the brain to signal a need for increased water. If water intake is increased without the corresponding increase in the intake of sodium, water intoxication results. So if sodium levels fall below 135 millimoles per liter, doctors refer to the issue as hypothermia. So example of these are workers exposed to high environmental temperatures and travelers to tropical countries not accustomed to heat may become victims of this condition and experience muscle cramps, weakness, or drop in blood pressure. This is relieved by providing sodium in very small amounts with the intake solids. So, sodium helps maintain the balance of fluids inside and outside of cells. When sodium level drop due to excessive water consumption, fluid travel from the outside to the inside of the cells, causing them to swell. When this happens to the brain cells, it can be dangerous or even life-threatening. So, overhydration may also arise if too much fluid is given intravenously. If the intake of water exceeds the maximum rate of urine flow, the cells and tissues become waterlogged and diluted. This may cause anorexia and vomiting, and it occurs in the brain. It may result in convulsion, coma, and even death.
Good day everyone, I am Sandrine Rodam and today we will be discussing all about dehydration. By definition, dehydration is the absence of a sufficient amount of water in your body. Dehydration occurs when you use or lose more fluid than you can take in, and your body doesn't have enough water and other fluids to carry out its normal functions. This condition becomes serious if the loss is about 10% of the total body water and fatal if loss is from 20% to 22%. It is especially critical in babies. Electrolytes are also lost with the water in this condition, and the skin becomes loose and inelastic. The most common cause of dehydration in young children is severe diarrhea and vomiting. Older adults naturally have a lower volume of water in their bodies and may have conditions or take medications that increase the risk of dehydration. This means that even minor illnesses, such as infections affecting the lungs or bladder, can result in dehydration in older adults. Dehydration also can occur in any age group if you don't drink enough water during hot weather, especially if you are exercising vigorously. You can usually reverse mild to moderate dehydration by drinking more fluids, but severe dehydration needs immediate medical treatment. Moving on to the symptoms of dehydration. Thirst isn't always a reliable early indicator of the body's need for water. Many people, particularly older adults, don't feel thirsty until they are already dehydrated. That's why it is important to increase water intake during hot weather or when you're ill. The signs and symptoms of dehydration also may differ by age. For the symptoms of dehydration for the infant or young child, it includes dry mouth and tongue, no tears when crying, no wet diapers for 3 hours, sunken eyes and cheeks, sunken soft spot on top of skull, and listlessness or irritability. For adult, the symptoms includes extreme thirst, less frequent urination, dark colored urine, fatigue, dizziness, and confusion. Causes of dehydration. Sometimes dehydration occurs for simple reasons. You don't drink enough because you're sick or busy, or because you lack access to safe drinking water when you're traveling, hiking, or camping. Other dehydration causes includes diarrhea, vomiting. Severe acute diarrhea, that is, diarrhea that comes on suddenly and violently, can cause a tremendous loss of water and electrolytes in a short amount of time. If you have vomiting along with diarrhea, you lose even more fluids and minerals. Second is fever. In general, the higher your fever, the more dehydrated you may become. The problem worsens if you have a fever in addition to diarrhea and vomiting. Third is the excessive sweating. You lose water when you sweat. If you do vigorous activity and don't replace fluids as you go along, you can become dehydrated. Hot, humid weather increases the amount you sweat and the amount of fluid you lose. And lastly, the increased urination. This may be due to undiagnosed or uncontrolled diabetes. Certain medications, such as diuretics and some blood pressure medications, also can lead to dehydration, generally because they cause you to urinate more. Risk factors of diabetes. Anyone can become dehydrated, but certain people are at greater risk, such as the infants and children. They are the most likely group to experience severe diarrhea and vomiting. Infants and children are especially vulnerable to dehydration. Having a higher surface area to volume area, they also lose a higher proportion of their fluids from a fever, high fever, or burns. Young children often can tell you that they are thirsty, nor can they get a drink for themselves. For older adults, as you age, your body's fluid reserve becomes smaller. Your ability to conserve water is reduced, and your thirst sense becomes less acute. These problems are compounded by chronic illnesses such as diabetes and dementia, and by the use of certain medications. Older adults also may have mobility problems that limit their ability to obtain water for themselves. People with chronic illnesses. Having uncontrolled or untreated diabetes puts you at high risk of dehydration. Kidney diseases also increase your risk, as do medications that increase urination. Even having a cold or sore throat makes you more susceptible to dehydration because you're less likely to feel like eating or drinking when you're sick. For those people who work or exercise outside, when it's hot and humid, your risk of dehydration and heat illness increases. That's because when the air is humid, sweat can't evaporate and cool you as quickly as it normally does, and this can lead to an increased body temperature, and the need for more fluids. Complications. Dehydration can lead to serious complications including heat injury. If you don't drink enough fluids when you're exercising vigorously and perspiring heavily, you may end up with a heat injury ranging in severity from mild heat cramps to heat exhaustion or potentially life-threatening heat stroke. Second is the urinary and kidney problems. Prolonged or repeated bouts of dehydration can cause urinary tract infections, kidney stones, and even kidney failure. Seizures. Electrolytes such as potassium and sodium help carry electrical signals from cell to cell. If your electrolytes are out of balance, the normal electrical messages can become mixed up, which can lead to involuntary muscle contractions and sometimes to a loss of consciousness. And lastly, the low blood volume shock or hypovolemic shock. This is one of the most serious and sometimes life-threatening complications of dehydration. It occurs when blood volume causes a drop in blood pressure and a drop in the amount of oxygen in your body. So how can we prevent dehydration? To prevent dehydration, you have to drink plenty of fluids and eat foods high in water such as fruits and vegetables. Letting thirst be your guide is an adequate daily guideline for most healthy people. People may need to take in more fluids if they are experiencing conditions such as vomiting or diarrhea. If your child is vomiting or has diarrhea, start giving extra water or an oral rehydration solution at the first signs of illness. Don't wait until dehydration occurs. The second is strenuous exercise. In general, it's best to start hydrating the day before strenuous exercise. Producing lots of clear dilute urine is a good indication that you're well hydrated. During the activity, replenish fluids at regular intervals and continue drinking water or other fluids after you're finished. Third is hot or cold weather. You need to drink additional water in hot or humid weather to help lower your body temperature and to replace what you lose through sweating. You may also need extra water in cold weather to combat moisture loss from dry air, particularly at higher altitudes. Illness. Older adults most commonly become dehydrated during minor illnesses, such as influenza, bronchitis, or bladder infections. Make sure to drink extra fluids when you're not feeling well. The previous table shows the average daily intake and output of water. So this is the ideal intake of water to avoid dehydration. So indicated from the table as previewed is the intake and its measurement in ml per day, as well as the output and its measurement in terms of ml per day. Intake. First is the oral fluids. The average daily intake in terms of ml for the oral fluids is 1,100 ml to 1,400 ml per day. For its output, it is sensible. The second is the solid foods. The average daily intake in terms of ml is 800 ml to 1,000 ml per day. For its output, it is urine, 1,200 to 1,500 ml per day. Third is the metabolic water 300 or oxidation of food. For the output of the intake, it is intestinal, insensible, lungs or water vapor, or in terms of skin or sweat. The average output of the metabolic water 300 or oxidation of food is 400 ml per day. So the total ml per day to be intake with the fluids mentioned are 2,200 ml to 2,700 ml per day, or approximately 2,500 ml per day. For the output of the previously mentioned fluids or water, The average amount is 2,200 to 2,700 ml per day for its output, or approximately 2,500 ml per day. That is all.
Good day, everyone. I am Nina Meika of Salas,
And I am Vicky Ursula Pitao.
and today we will discuss about the normal electrolyte concentrations of the extracellular and intracellular fluids, milliequivalents per liter. So, what is extracellular and intracellular fluids?
So, extracellular fluid, it is a body fluid that is not contained in cells. It is found in blood, in lymph, in body cavities lined with serous membrane in the cavities and channels of the brain and spinal cord, and in muscular and other body tissues.
And in cellular fluids or intracellular fluids, the internal fluid located within the cells. It composed of water-dissolved ions and other molecules.
Here are the normal values of electrolytes concentration of the extra and intracellular fluids or milliequivalents per liter. In table 43, we have cations. For the cations, we have sodium, potassium, calcium, and magnesium. So in sodium, we have 135 to 147 for the extracellular fluids, while in intracellular fluids, we have 10. For potassium, we have 3.5 to 5.5 extracellular fluids and 150 for intracellular fluids. For calcium, we have 4.5 to 5.5 extracellular, while 1 to 2 in intracellular. And lastly, for magnesium, we have 1.5 to 3 extracellular fluids, while in intracellular fluids, we have 40.
In anions, it has chloride, bicarbonate, phosphate, sulfate, and organic acids or lactic pyruvic, proteins or proteinate. In chloride, it has 98 to 106 extracellular fluids, while in intracellular fluids, it has 4. In bicarbonate, it has 26 to 30 extracellular fluids, while in intracellular fluids, it has 10. In phosphate, it has 2 to 5 extracellular fluids, while in intracellular fluids, it has 140. In sulfate, it has 2 to 5 extracellular fluids, while in intracellular fluids, it has 10. And in organic acids or lactic pyruvic, it has 3 to 6 extracellular fluids, while in intracellular fluids, it has 40. And lastly, in proteins or proteinate, it has 15 to 19 extracellular fluids, and in intracellular fluids, it has no value.
So that would be all for Chapter 7, which is the water and electrolyte balance. Thanks for listening.